Okay, and first of all, thank you. Yaniv's energy is infectious. Anytime I'm like sluggish, or I just have to call Yaniv, and he's like, "Hey, Rabbi, how are you doing? How you doing?" The amount of energy, drive, enthusiasm that Yaniv brings both to CHAZAQ and to life is very, very inspiring. May he continue with his wife to have tremendous Siyat L'Shmaya. May CHAZAQ have tremendous Siyat L'Shmaya. It's a very, very important organization. And if you have lots of money, you should support it. Even if you don't have lots of money, you should support it. It's a very worthy organization, and it really does warrant your supporting it. When a person leaves this earth, there are many things that he could have done, that he should have done. Probably one of the most painful words that you'll ever hear a person say are on his deathbed: I could have, I should have, I would have, but I didn't. And it's during this busyness that we call life that we forget why we're here, we forget what life is about. And typically, people live very, very busy, very, very distracted lives, multitasking 2, 3, 5 things at a time, not knowing what they're doing, when they're doing, why they're doing it. And the Gemara tells us that when a person leaves this earth, he stands in front of Hashem, and they ask a number of questions. The very first question that they ask is, why is it that you didn't involve yourself in Torah study? Why didn't you accomplish? Why didn't you become a Talmid Chacham? And the Gemara tells us that the ani, the poor man, the ashir, the wealthy man, each comes in front of Hashem, and each one is asked that question, and each one of them provides their long list of excuses, of reasons why I would have, could have, should have, but didn't. The ani comes in, and poor man comes in, and they say, why didn't you become a Torah scholar? Why didn't you become someone great? Me. I had to work 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. I barely could afford to put food on the table. You wanted me to become someone great? To become someone accomplished? And the Gemara says that they say to him, you were no more poor than was Hillel. And the Gemara goes on to tell us the famous event of Hillel. When Hillel was already a zaken, he would earn his daily keep, he would earn his living by going into the woods, and he would gather Hillel would gather kindling wood, he would gather twigs, and these twigs he would sell for people to start their fire, and each day he would sell these twigs and earn a tarpik. A tarpik was the smallest coin in the land, effectively a penny. Every day when he would sell this wood, earn his tarpik, half of that money he would give to feed his household, and half of that money he would give to the shomer Beis HaMedrash. In those days, the Beis Medrash was out in the fields. There was a guardsman who protected the Jews' learning. The guardsman earned his living by collecting a fee. Every day Hillel would sell a little bit of wood and pay the guardsman to sit and learn Torah. One day, Erev Shabbos, Teves, it was the winter time. Hillel apparently didn't have time to collect the wood, but he comes to the guardsman and he says, listen, I'm here every day. And every day I pay you, and every day I sit and learn. I didn't have time to earn the money today, please let me in. The guardsman said, no. Please, no, please, no. And finally Hillel says the words, how could I leave Divrei Elokim Chaim, the living words of Torah? He goes to the side of the Beis Medrash, he climbs up. On top of the Beis Medrash was an aruba, a skylight, and he listened to the shiur from the skylight. Now it's not clear what happened. He either fell asleep or he passed out, but it began snowing. And in the morning, when Shmaya and Avatalion came into the Beis Medrash, they saw that it was dark. They looked up into the skylight and they saw the image of a man covered with snow. They said to someone, quick, run, get him down, get him down. And they brought him down, and Shmaya said the words, Roy l'chalav as a Shabbos. This man, it's worthy to desecrate the Shabbos for. They lit a fire, heated up some water, resuscitated him. And when the poor man says, I was too poor, I would have loved to have learned. but I just couldn't have done it. They say to him, you were no more poor than was Hillel. If Hillel could do it, so too could have you. And then the wealthy man comes forward. Me learn. I had 700 people in my employ. Everyone in town, every issue was at my doorstep. They kept asking and bothering, how could I have accomplished? How could I have learned Torah? I was way, way too busy. And the Gemara says, they say to him, you are no more wealthy than was Rabbi Elazar bar Charsam. And the Gemara goes on to tell us who Rabbi Elazar bar Charsam was. And Rabbi Elazar bar Charsam was a tremendous Talmud Chacham. He spent his every waking moment, every thought in Torah study, and he did nothing but that. His father was a wealthy businessman. His father made quite a bit of money, and his father began buying land, more land, and more land. In those days, if you owned a tract of land, you were the landlord. You made the laws, you set the taxes. It was effectively your kingdom. Rabbi Elazar bar Charsam's father owned 1,000 cities, a wealth that's almost unimaginable. And when he died, all of that wealth was left to Rabbi Elazar bar Charsam. He now became one of the wealthiest men in his generation. And from the moment that he inherited that awesome amount of money, he didn't change an iota. He remained the same individual, same involvement in Torah study, same total dedication. And when the rich man stands in front of Hashem and says, I was way, way too busy, they say to him, you are no more wealthy than was Rabbi Elazar bar Charsam. It comes out that Hillel obligates the poor people, and Rabbi Elazar bar Charsam obligates the wealthy people. And that's the Gemara. And I was zocha to hear my Rebbe, the Shiva Zatzal, ask a question on this Gemara, and it's really two questions. Question number one. I could stand here, say one thing, and think something totally different. You can't tell. You could hear my words, you can see my actions, but you can't tell what's going on in my heart. But this Gemara is talking when the body, this part's put in the ground, I separate, and I stand in front of Hashem. Hashem is a very, very astute judge. What does Hashem need Hillel for? If Hillel could do it, Mr. Poor Man, you could have. Let Hashem peer into the essence of this poor man and say, sir, you could have or you could not have. Either the poor man had the capacity, he had the ability, or he did not. Hashem doesn't need Hillel. If Hillel could do it, so I prove that you can do it. Hashem is a very fine judge. Hashem doesn't need Hillel. Let Hashem say, Mr. Poor Man, you could or could not. Question number one is, who needs Hillel? But question number two is a bit more penetrating. The Vilna Gaon tells us that the most painful moment in a person's life is not that fatal car crash, not when they drag the sheet over my head, not even when I separate, not even when I leave my body behind. It says the Vilna Gaon, it's when I stand in front of the Beis Din Shamal, I stand in front of the heavenly tribunal, and they hold up this picture of this great man, a tzaddik, a Talmid Chacham, a man who changed himself and changed the very generation that he lived in. And they say to me, why didn't you become that? Look at me. You want me to be a great man, a tzaddik, a Talmid Chacham? What do you want from me? And says the Vilna Gaon, the most painful words that a human being will ever hear are the words, that is you. That is you had you used your talents. That is you had you used your abilities. That is you had you become that which you were destined to be. But you see, the picture is a picture of me. It's not a picture of you. It's not a picture of a great sage who lived hundreds of years ago. It's a picture of me, based on my strengths, my talents, my abilities, based on the generation into which I was born, based on the family into which I was born, based on the birth order. This is what I could have been. And the only question that they ask is one: how much of you did you become? I'm not compared to you, and you're not compared to her. Not a one of us is compared to anyone else. There's only one standard of measure. How much could I have become? What were my strengths, my talents? Here's the picture of what I could have been. How much of me did I reach? 80%, 60%, 40%. So if that's true, then Hillel is the wrong standard of measure. Who cares? One time in history, there was a tremendous individual called Hillel. A singular personality who shines throughout the generations. It's not relevant. The question is, Mr. Poor Man, Mr. Rich Man, what was your capacity? You're not compared to Hillel. You're not compared to Rebbe Bar Charsim. You're compared to you. So question number one is we don't need Hillel. Question number two is Hillel is the wrong standard of measure. The poor man is not compared to Hillel. The rich man is not compared to Rebbe Bar Charsim. What does this Gemara mean? And I'd like to see if we could understand a little bit better what this Gemara is in fact sharing with us. And to do that, I'd like to share with you an interesting thought. If you go to Asia today, you'll still find that much of the heavy lifting is done by the elephant. Parts of the continent are still undeveloped, and in those parts of the continent, you'll see the elephant all day long trudging through the jungle. Big, powerful elephant. In its trunk will be logs, on its back will be a basket, and the trainer will lead the elephant, and all day long the elephant carries, the elephant schleps. At night, they tie this elephant to a peg in the ground, and the elephant remains there the entire night. Now, if you were looking at this scene, you might ask the following question. Powerful, huge animal. Rope, not that strong. Peg, not that deep in the ground. The question you would ask is, why doesn't the elephant just escape? Why doesn't it just break out and go into the jungle and eat and forage, whatever it wants to do? And many an evening the elephant would rather do that. But the elephant can't. And you know why? When the elephant's born, it weighs about 250 pounds. And the trainer ties the elephant, the baby elephant, up to the peg in the ground, and the baby elephant tries to break out, but it can't do it. It tries a second time, it tries for 3 days, it tries for a week, it tries for a month, and the baby elephant then knows the lesson. The rope is too strong, the peg is too deep. And even when the elephant becomes fully grown, even when it weighs 14,000 pounds, even when it can plow through a cement wall like it's paper, it remains rooted in the ground because in its limited understanding, it can't escape. The rope is too thick, the peg is too deep. And I believe that that's an apt parable to many, many people. Many, many people that you will meet in life do not become a fraction of what they could have been. Not because they don't have talent, not because they don't have ability, but because they have limited beliefs. They have very, very small versions of themselves. What do you want from me? I'm a regular guy, a regular person. You want me to aspire to greatness? You want me to set goals? You want me to start an organization? You want me to be I'm just a regular person. And these self-fulfilling prophecies become limiting beliefs, ceilings that hold them down, and like the mighty, powerful elephant that remains tied to a small peg in the ground, great people never become a fraction of what they could have been, not because they don't have talents, but because they have these limiting beliefs that keep them locked into place. And every once in a while, you hear about someone shattering such a limiting belief. Let me share with you one example from competitive sports. Historically, one of the greatest records in sports was the 4-minute mile. Athlete after athlete, decade after decade, dreamt about running a mile in under 4 minutes. For over 100 years, not a single athlete could run a mile in under 4 minutes. In 1912, Pavel Nuru from Finland ran the mile in 4 minutes and 10 seconds. Gunnar Hahn in Sweden, 12 years later, ran it in 4 minutes and 6 seconds. Carpenter, an American fellow in 1945, ran it in 4 minutes and 4 seconds, and it remained rooted there. No one could run a mile in under 4 minutes. Doctors offered all kinds of theories. Man's skeletal structure is all wrong. He creates too much wind resistance. He can't take in enough air. His lung capacity isn't great enough. It became an accepted medical fact that no human being can run a mile in under 4 minutes. As a matter of fact, one runner, an Australian fellow, John Landy, ran the mile in 4 minutes and 2 seconds 4 times in a row. He said the words, "It's a brick wall." May 5th, 1956, Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile. That record that remained for decades as impenetrable, he ran the mile in under 4 minutes. Amazingly, 37 days later, John Landy, the Australian fellow, 4 minutes, 2 seconds, brick wall, ran the mile faster than did Roger Bannister. And by the end of the year, 27 other runners had run the mile in under 4 minutes. But here's the strange part. Nothing changed. They didn't change diet. They didn't change running technique. They didn't change running shoes. The only thing that changed was Roger Bannister took something from the realm of impossible and he made it possible. Then John Landy could, and 27 runners could. Now any decent track star runs the mile in under 4 minutes. But you see, it took one human being to shatter the myth, to break through that wall. Once he did, then many, many others could follow suit. And many times in life, you'll find limiting beliefs, powerful ceilings that keep people in check, but they're not there. They're there in their minds, they're there in their imaginations, but as long as you think they're real, as long as you believe in them, they'll hold you down right to the floor. In 1997, in Tallahassee, Florida, a young boy was involved in a car accident. The ambulances came rushing to the scene, the EMTs were milling around, but they couldn't help the boy. You see, his arm was pinned under the wheel of a car. They had to get him to the hospital, but they couldn't extract his arm. It was literally jammed under the wheel. They're all debating what to do, get a crane, do whatever to do. Finally, an onlooker, without hesitating, runs over to the bumper of the car, bends down, lifts the car up, and they literally take the boy out, put him into the ambulance, rush him to the hospital, patch him up. He's good to go. This story became a media sensation because the onlooker wasn't some burly fireman or some trained medical technician. The onlooker was the boy's 63-year-old grandmother. And when news spread of this, it went from coast to coast. It became a sensation that literally went across the country. Dr. Charles Garfield had written a book called Peak Performance. He was a psychologist, a personal coach, and he studied athletes. He spent his career studying athletes who performed feats of strength that were unimaginable. Athletes who lifted 1,200-pound boulders. Athletes who ran for 2 days straight. He spent his career studying phenomenal feats of strength. And when he read this article, he said, I must interview this woman. I must get her story. So he called her up. She refused to meet with him. He called a second time. She refused again. He called a third time. She again refused. And finally, after the fourth time, she agreed to meet with him. And he described that when he went to her house, she welcomes him in, offers him a cup of coffee. They sit down, and the first thing he says, Madam, I have to understand. Tell me, what were you thinking? What were you feeling? And she began telling a story. She began telling what she was experiencing, what she was going through, what it was like. And after she went through the whole story, he finally said, I have one last question. I don't understand this. What I don't understand is what you've done is miraculous. It's heroic. You saved your grandson's life. What I don't understand is why were you so reluctant to speak to me? Why were you so resistant to tell your story? And he says that she looked at him and she said these words. If this, which I knew was impossible, I really could do, what does it say about the rest of my life? He asked her, what do you mean? She said, well, she always dreamt of being a college teacher. She only finished high school. So Dr. Charles Garfield, being a personal coach, created a plan for her, and at the age of 63, Mrs. Laura Schultz began her college education, and she ended up teaching college-level science. Okay, but here's the punchline. You and I both know that in the real world, grandmas don't lift cars. Doesn't happen. In the real world, the boy remains pinned there. Whatever happens, happens. But 63-year-old women can't lift cars. Until a woman sees her grandson pinned under the wheel of the car and says, it will happen. And she rushes over without thinking, without hesitating, and she finds strength that she never imagined she had. She taps into energy that she never could envision having, and she does that which until then was impossible. But until someone shatters that limiting belief, they're held in check. Most people are held in check by many, many forces. Many, many powerful shackles keep them down. I was zocheh to hear Rabbi Foyer say a hesped, say a eulogy for his father-in-law. His father-in-law was Rav Mordechai Gifter. If you don't know who Rav Mordechai Gifter was, Rav Mordechai Gifter died about 25 years ago. He was an American-born gadol. He was one of the very first gedolim who were born in America and became a gadol b'Yisrael. And at his funeral, his son-in-law, Rabbi Foyer, said as follows. Rav Gifter grew up in the United States of America. And he went to yeshiva initially here. And if you walked into his dorm room, there was one thing that was different. On the wall was a mirror. That alone wasn't so unusual. Other fellows had mirrors. But around the mirror were pictures of everyone that Rav Gifter wanted to be like. Rav Shimon Shkop, Rav Baruch Ber, the other great Torah personalities that he dreamt about being like. But that was not the unusual part. It was the words over the mirror. Over the mirror were the words, why not you? And apparently every day, young Mordechai Gifter would walk over to the mirror, look at the picture of the people that he wanted to be like, look in his eyes, read the words, why not you? And there was no reason why not you, because he became Rav Mordechai Gifter, tells the Rosh Yeshiva, Gadol b'Yisrael. But that ability to look in the mirror, have heroes, have people who you aspire to be like, and ask yourself, why not me, is one of the keys to success in life. And I heard my Rebbe, the Yeshiva Zatzal, explain this Gemara that way. You know what it means that the poor man obligates Hillel? The poor man is obligated by Hillel. The poor man is not compared to Hillel, but what Hillel did was he shattered the myth. He was more poor than you, had a worse situation than you, and look what he accomplished. You now had a hero. You now had a man who broke through, shattered that limiting belief. Like Roger Bannister, who broke the 4-minute mile. He was once a wealthy man who was so wealthy, and yet he became a tremendous person. The reality changed. And when the Gemara says that Hillel obligates the poor man, Rebbe Eliezer Bar Charsim obligates the wealthy man, it's because they changed the reality. Now every human being has someone to look up to. Every human being has someone who's accomplished, who did. And now I can look and say, why not me? And I believe that this is one of the keys to success in any endeavor in life. If you find me a person who succeeded in anything, if it's business, if it's academics, if it's writing, if it's art, if it's poetry, find me a human being who became well-known or famous. I guarantee he had heroes, he aspired, he looked in the mirror and said the words, why not you? But there's another lesson that you need if you want to succeed at anything in life. When I was about 24 years old, I was still single, I was in yeshiva, and I was invited to join a Musar Chabura. What's a Musar Chabura? It's a group of fellows about the same age. Each week, one of the fellows would present a novel concept in Musar. And then as a group, we discussed how we could apply it. So one week, a fellow brought in a Gemara, he brought in an interesting concept about character trait development, and we discussed as a group how to apply it. Another week, someone brought in a Chumash, discussed something about Emunah. He said something new there, and we discussed how we could apply it. My turn to present came, and I walked into the room. I was not holding a Gemara. I was not holding a Chumash. I walked in carrying a picture sports book. Now, these were pretty serious fellows, and I got some pretty serious looks, as in, like, what's with the picture sports book? I took the book and put it down on the table and opened it up to the center fold, and there you saw Muhammad Ali holding up the heavyweight championship belt. Now, those serious looks turned pretty dirty, as in, oh, Shafier, what do you want? I said, tell me what you see. All right, we get it. Frazier had been the world champion. Ali just won the fight. What do you want? I said, exactly. When you look at this picture, what you see is glory. You see victory. You don't see that Muhammad Ali was driven from the fight directly to the hospital. When you read the sports section the next day, you read about the new world champion, but you don't read about the fact that he got so beat up in the fight that he was driven directly to the hospital, and for 3 weeks he could not get out of a hospital bed. You see the victory, you see the glory, but you don't see the pain that he went through to get there. And what I wanted to share with my friends that day was that this is the second lesson in life. You see, if you have goals, if you have heroes, and if you ask yourself, why not you, you'll have some real great motivation. And if you don't know the second lesson to success in life, I guarantee you'll fail. The second lesson to success in life is you got to know how to take a punch. You got to know how to get knocked to the ground and get back in the fight again. Anyone here box, ladies? Okay. I made the foolish mistake when I was 18. I spent about 6 months in a boxing gym, and let me share with you. If you know a boxer up front and personal, they're all ugly. Why? Because when you get smashed in the nose and smashed in the eyes, you become disfigured, right? Muhammad Ali was the prettiest boxer ever. He was known as Pretty Boy Ali. Why? Because he never got hit. He used to float like a butterfly, dance, right? Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, right? You could watch the punches come. He would slip, he would duck. He never got hit. Muhammad Ali estimated that in his professional career, he was hit in the head at least 1 million times. That means at least 1 million times some 220-pound chayara smashed him full force in the jaw. That's Pretty Boy Ali, the guy who never got hit. And Muhammad Ali said one line that I wanted to share with my friends that day. He said, when you see a professional prize fighter who's down for the count, you know, the guy gets knocked down, the referee counts to 10, know and understand he's not knocked out. A professional fighter is in such good shape that it almost never happens that he's knocked unconscious. What happened was he got hurt, he lost courage, he no longer has the guts to get back in the fight, he lost heart. Because the idea of a professional fighter being knocked unconscious almost never happens. He no longer has the guts to get back in the fight. And what I wanted to share with my friends that day was a very, very big concept. And that is, after you have your goals, after you look in the mirror and you say, why not you? When you realize, I have potential, I have strength, Hashem gave me talents. And when you say, I don't want to be that powerful elephant tied to the peg in the ground, and you have heroes, and you say, yes, I'm going to accomplish, you have to also know that second lesson. That second lesson is that if you find me a human being who succeeded in anything in life, I guarantee I will find you a human being who got knocked down time after time after time after time. And everyone dreams of being whatever. And if you want to be an inventor, if you want to be a writer, if you want to be an artist, you want to be an academic, you want to be a businessman, whatever you want to dream about, I guarantee you, if you find me a human being who became great in anything in life, he had dreams and he knew how to take a punch. Because it never happens. It never happens that you begin an endeavor and it's success and success, success after success, success after success after that. These are fluorescent bulbs. Okay, who invented the incandescent? The old-fashioned bulb. Who invented it, right? Thomas Edison, right? Thomas Edison was a wealthy man already. He basically, he came up with so many inventions that it was hard to believe. He already had his laboratory. He was an established person. He decided that he wanted to find a way to harness electricity in a light that people could use in their home. But here was the problem. He couldn't find what material to use. He used cotton, it burnt out too quickly. He used hemp, it burnt out too quickly. He used metals, it didn't. Material after material, he could not find a single material that would glow bright and would last for any length of time. He would try one material, and then he would go to sleep under his laboratory desk, and he'd wake up a few hours later, it was burnt out. He'd try another one, and it was burnt one after another after another. How many different types of materials did he try? 500, 600, 700, 2,000. His biographer says that he tried 10,000 different materials. But what that means in plain language is 9,999 failures. He blew it again, messed up again. One more time it didn't work. One more time I failed. And most people would have quit after the second or third time. Fifth, eighth, 10th time for sure. 100th time. I've tried 200 different materials. It can't be done. It's physically impossible. That's what everyone else said. And the reason why he discovered the incandescent light bulb was because he had one burning drive. I will find a way to do it. And he was prepared and willing to pay the price. And that price is getting hit, falling down, getting back in the fight, time after time. Now, ladies, you may say, come on, all this boxing stuff, I can't relate to this. Give me a nice feminine sport. Give me a nice, come on, Winter Olympics, volley, no, winter, come on, this is the Winter Olympics, right? Give me something nice, what? Figure skating. Isn't that they wear the lovely little leotard, and it's so delicate, I have 4 girls, they all want to do, okay, here we go. What could be more feminine and delicate than figure skating? Oh, she's so graceful, and she jumps and she twirls. Okay. How do you distinguish between the mediocre figure skaters and the elite figure skaters? So what they've discovered is the single criteria that tells you whether this girl will be an elite athlete or not is how many times she's willing to fall. You see, I don't care how good you are, you try a new jump. Now, the first time you try it at home on the carpet, and it's fine. You jump and you twirl, it's good, fine. You get to the ice, and your coach puts on a harness. The harness supports you, so even if you miss, it doesn't matter because you don't fall. But eventually the harness comes off, and eventually you're on the ice, and you're doing your jump. And I don't care how gifted you are, you're going to fall. Once, twice, 3 times, 7 times, 10 times. On a regular basis, the best athletes will fall 10, 20 times in a session. The girl who won the 2006 Olympics, a Japanese girl, she began skating at 5, she won the Olympics at 16. Her coach estimates that between those years she fell at least 20,000 times. Would you like to know what it's like to fall on the hard ice one more time? You try to jump and you fell again, and you fell again, and you fell again, and there's a voice in your head that says, give it up. You're obviously not made for this stuff. You're obviously not equipped for this. This is not for you. You've fallen and fallen and fallen and fallen. It's enough. Quit. And the difference between those people who reach greatness and those people who don't is their ability to one more time get in the game. And folks, don't make a mistake. Don't think, well, this is about athletics and this is about young athletes. This is a yesod, a principle for life. I want to share with you a quote. And after I tell you the quote, I'm going to ask you who said it. Here's the quote. Success consists of going from failure to failure without a loss of enthusiasm. One more time. Success consists of going from failure to failure without a loss of enthusiasm. Who said the quote? Anybody? Huh? Napoleon Hill. You're a good person. Anybody else? Anybody? No? Okay. Benjamin Franklin. Okay. All right. Let me give you a little background. The man who said the quote. I'm sorry?
Rabbi Benzion Shafier.
Okay, Joshua. Okay, I'll give you some hints. The man who said the quote was a college professor. The man won the Nobel Prize in history. Not bad. The man was a world statesman. The man was knighted by the Queen of England. The man, as a matter of fact, was the Prime Minister of England. The man was Sir Winston Churchill. But let me tell you who Sir Winston Churchill was. Historians credit Churchill with saving the free world. You see, in 1933, when Hitler was elected Reich Chancellor, Chamberlain was the Prime Minister of England. Chamberlain was, excuse my expression, a wimp. His entire policy was appeasement. Give Hitler some breathing room, give him some land, give him Czechoslovakia, give whatever he wanted. That was Chamberlain's attitude. From the parliament floor, there was one lone voice. Winston Churchill, the lion that roared, screamed, Adolf Hitler's a menace to society. He's a menace to mankind. Later on, Winston Churchill was elected Prime Minister, and historians say that it was his leadership, his grit, that galvanized the Allies, and if not for him, the Nazis would have won. May 1945, Germany surrendered. July 1945, there were elections in England, and Winston Churchill lost. After bringing England to its finest hour, after saving democracy, the man found himself unemployed, down and out on the streets. A great wartime leader, but we need a different sort of leadership now. He found himself without a job. He went on to write that 6 treatise work that won him the Nobel Prize. He went on to fight communism. But that was his life. Success consists of going from failure to failure. And the reason why I share that with you is because if you're young at this thing called life, or if you're naive at this thing called life, you think you go into business and you make $1 billion the first week for sure. Or at least the second month, for guaranteed. And then you find that it doesn't quite work that way. And you find out that most successful businessmen tried one business and failed at it. Tried another one and failed at it. Had great challenges financially, found themselves in deep trouble, came up with another idea, tried that, and finally they succeeded. And what you discover is that any endeavor in life, whatever you're at, it never just works. You just get into the chair, a rocket ship propelled to the heights. And the reason I share that with you is because most people don't get this. They sure don't get it in high school. They don't get it in college. They don't get it when they begin their career. And then they get stuck in this rut and they never become, because they start getting the sense of this is what it is, this is what it's about, I'll never be anyone. And if you're satisfied with that, okay, go for it. Be no one, be a mediocre, be a just run-of-the-mill. Most people you'll meet are satisfied with just that. Most people you meet don't really challenge themselves. Most people you meet don't really ask themselves anything. And most people you meet really are just plain whatever. Sorry to be the one to tell you that. And if you're satisfied with that, go ahead, be whatever. But every once in a while, you wake up and you say, wait a minute. I can't believe that Hashem took me from under the Kisei HaKavod, under the Hashem's throne of glory, put me into this body for whatever. Just hang out, get married, have a kid or two, make some money, spend the money, make some more money, spend that money, then you die, and whatever. It's okay, you're good, you're okay, you're decent. All right. Hashem gave me talents, Hashem gave me strength, Hashem gave me abilities, but my abilities and my talents are not yours. And you're not compared to her, and she's not compared to him, not a one of us compared to anyone else. Each of us has strengths and talents. There's only one question that they ask at the end of our days: how much of you did you become? How much of your potential did you reach? And if you wake up in the morning and you say, wait a minute, I'm not satisfied with just going through the motions of life, that's when you have to learn very well the 2 lessons. Lesson number 1 is you have to have heroes. And you have to have people who succeeded. Your job in life is not to be like them. Your job in life is to say, wait a minute, that person walked the same earth that I walk. That person breathed air just as I breathe air. That person accomplished greatness. If he could do it, so too can I. I'm not comparing myself to that person. I'm not asking myself to be like that person. If he could do it in his realm, in his area, I could do it in mine. And you use that motivation, that inspiration to set powerful, real goals, concrete goals, with a timeline, with real demands. And then you get into this thing called growing, and you fall down. You set a goal and you fail. And as most people, you say to yourself, well, I guess I'm just not cut out for this. I tried and I didn't make it. I tried again and I didn't make it. And that's where most people kind of throw in the towel. And if you're satisfied with whatever and you're happy to be that way, okay. But if you've decided that you actually want to accomplish, and I don't care what that is, certainly in Torah learning, and certainly in being a respectable human being, and certainly if you want to make it in business, or if you want to make it in any field, you have to know that second lesson. And that second lesson is, it's not going to be easy. There are going to be pitfalls, you're going to fall down, and you're going to have to get back in the game. And while this is a big lesson for life, there's a particular area that I'd like to apply this to this evening. We are experiencing in our community more and more problems with marriages. I get to watch from a very upfront and personal way, because people come to me all the time with their problems. My spouse, my husband, my wife, my spouse, and when they come together, it's even better because I get to get in stereo. It's my husband, my wife. So I get to hear the story after story after story after story after story after story after story. If I had $1 for every time I said to my wife, it's a match made in heaven and they're living in Gehenna, I would be wealthy. I'll translate. It's a match made in heaven and they're living in purgatory. Why? It's not that they're not suited one for another. It's not that the match was wrong. They're perfectly suited for each other. It's a perfect shidduch. But they're killing each other because they don't know how to be married. And we live in a very difficult generation. We are pampered, self-centered, impatient. What's in it for me? From the time I'm born, the center of the universe is me, my needs, my interests. And the minute that my needs are not met, I'm out of here. And there are a lot of issues in marriage. And I'd like to share with you that if you would like to be happily married, it is very, very, very easy to find your bashert, to find the one that you are destined to be with. It's not hard at all. There's a book. Plug the book. Finding and Keeping Your Soulmate. Read the book. You're not going to listen to it, but eventually, unless you do something really foolish, you'll find your soulmate. It's easy to find him or her. But then, being married successfully, being married happily, is a whole different ballgame. Finding the right person is easy, and remaining happily married to that right person is not easy at all. And you know why? Because folks, are we allowed to be honest? We're allowed to be We're not really honest? Okay. One day, I challenge you, one day go over to the mirror. And forget the goals and the why not you stuff. Go over to the mirror and go like this. There I am. The perfect person. Everything I do is perfect. I'm so smart and so clever and so brilliant and so easy to get along with. And everything I do is perfect. And then say to yourself, liar. I have quirks. I'm either too neat or too sloppy, too on time or too late, too this or too that. Every one of us, I don't care who you are, I guarantee you're a difficult person to live with. Why? Because we all have our stuff. This is my way and it's the right way. And I don't care what your way is. If your way is never to bounce a check in your entire life, you balance the accounts down to the penny, or if you bounce checks like the rubber balls. I don't care if you're always late, you're always on time, if you leave your socks on the floor, you're always the neatest person in the world. Every one of us put into close proximity to another person has stuff that makes it not so easy to be married to. A married couple are not asked to be business partners. They're not asked to share parts of their life together. They're asked to do everything together. From the way they raise their children, to the culture of their house, to where they vacation, to how they deal with everything. And when you take two human beings from different families, different ways of life, different genders, put them together and ask them to live in peace and harmony, you are destined to have a lot of trouble. Unless you're willing to change, unless you're willing to grow, unless you're willing to understand what marriage is about. And I have seen many, many marriages head south, and Baruch Hashem, I've had the opportunity to see many marriages actually that were in a really rough part, really fighting tooth and nail. And whatever the reason, people began explaining to them how things really should be, and they began working, and they began growing. And I know many couples who are now beautiful, happy marriages, where 5 years ago they were killing each other, and now they're successful, beautiful, harmonious marriages. And again, unfortunately, I know the opposite as well. And the reason why I think this particular topic this evening is very applicable is because most married people at some point in their marriage wake up and say these words, "Oh my goodness, I made the biggest mistake in my life. Oh no, I married the wrong one." And he'll give you the litany, the long list. She's this and she's that and she did. He doesn't say it all what he does. He couldn't tell you for the life of him his part of the equation, but he can tell you very clearly what she does, when she did it, how she did it, and he is convinced 100% that he made the biggest mistake in his life. So, at that point, you have a choice. You do what most people do. You exit. Get a divorce, not a big deal. I was with my wife in a restaurant. We were about over here, and about over here were three young guys. And I heard one young guy, and my wife heard it as well, say the following words: "You know, I made a mistake. I got married too old. I should have gotten married younger. That way I could have gotten divorced younger, gotten the alimony payments, child payments done with, and then gone on to my second marriage at a younger point in life." And my wife and he said it loud enough that we could hear. My wife and I looked at each other. "What did you say? What?" I wanted to grab the guy. What? And most people, when they make that discovery, that, "Oh my goodness, it's not Hollywood." You know what happens in Hollywood? He looks in her eyes. She looks in her eyes. Oh, happily ever after, till the first fight. And then Hollywood's over. Goodbye. Second marriage, third marriage, fourth marriage. Why not? Hey, come on. It's disposable. So when you wake up in the morning at some point and say to yourself, "I made the biggest mistake in my life," it is then time for you to ask yourself one simple question. Did Hashem blow it? Did Hashem make a mistake? Yeah, maybe, it could be like Hashem used to be very good at this thing called matchmaking. And it could be Hashem is very good at like creating the world and running the world and all that good stuff. But Hashem made an obvious mistake. Hashem blew it. Hashem made a really dumb mistake and gave me the wrong person because it's obvious and clear. And most people say exactly those words. Or you have another choice. The other choice is to ask yourself, what's going on here? Why is it that things aren't so smooth? Why is it that things aren't working out so well? Ladies and gentlemen, this is a plug. I spent 3 months of my life working on something called the Marriage Seminar. The Marriage Seminar is a 14 lectures that deal with the basics of marriage. His part, her part, gender differences, relationships, how to work on a marriage. I spent an untold amount of hours and time after just being so sickened by couple after couple who didn't know basics. Folks, you want to hear a piece of irony? If you go to the state of California and you would like to be a barber, 6 months of schooling, a written and practical exam. In the state of New York, if you want to drive a car, driver's education, 50 hours of supervised practice, a written and a practical exam. If you want to get married, sign on a dotted line, you're married. And there's no educational courses. There's no what to expect. There's no what happens when he says and she says and why did he do that and why did she do that. And guess what? It used to work. You know why? Because there was no alternative. You know, in 1906, in the United States of America, the divorce rate was 6%. People did not get divorced. So basically, you got married and you found out, oh my goodness, I married this one, and you had to figure it out. Not every marriage was successful, but because you knew that marriage was forever, until death do us part, not until you part, but until death do us part. And so you knew that you had better figure out how to work things out. People weren't as self-centered, they weren't as selfish, and you knew you had to work it out. And basically, most people worked it out. Those are not the times we live in today. You get married, you're not happy, and you check out before you even realize that you don't have a clue to what marriage is about. You don't have a clue to what a relationship is about. You don't understand. And I can't tell you how many countless times when I've explained to a husband why his wife acts that way. And I've explained to a wife why it is that her husband acts that way. It's because of what you're doing, and it's because of what you're doing. And if you would stop doing this, he would stop doing that. Wow. I never realized. And as shocking as it is, you could get married in the United States of America today and be completely, utterly ignorant. You can't get behind the wheel of a car without knowing how to steer it, but you can get married without having a clue about what marriage is about. So, what I'd like to do is extend to you an offer. Listen to the marriage seminar. It is free. How much does it cost? Free. Anybody here Jewish? Free. Did I say that right? Capital F-R-E-E. It's on the Shmooze app. If you don't have the Shmooze app, you go to the App Store, go to Google Play, and you download the app. Just remember it's spelled funny, T-H-E-S-H-M-U-Z, the Shmooze, and you can download the app. The app is also free. How much? Free. And on the app, you'll see the marriage seminar. All 14 parts are on it. You can go on the website if you don't have a smartphone, which is a very smart thing not to have. If you don't have a smartphone, you can go on the shmooze.com and you could download it there. Also, how much does it cost? Right. Or you could buy the CDs. I'm a businessman. I make a lot of money off of CDs, right? How much? The CD, they're very expensive to produce. The CD set is $30. It's 12 CDs, and it really costs a lot of money to produce. So I can't lose. I can give it free, but I can't lose money on it. So, and I have a few sets here if you're interested. They're $30. But again, if you have a smartphone or if you have a website, you can just download it from the shmooze.com, or again, the app is the easiest because it's right on your phone. But you see, folks, when you do that, I want to share with you what I believe your experience is going to be. First of all, I personally guarantee that you're going to say, wow, wow, oh, I never knew that. That's if you're married. See, if you're everybody is wise, and everyone knows everything about marriage until they get married. I remember when I was single, I knew everything about marriage. I knew everything about marriage problems. I knew exactly how to solve them until I got married. And then I discovered something interesting. So I guarantee, if you're single, you're going to listen to this and say, yeah, I knew that. Yeah, right, it's easy, yeah, okay. But if you're married, you're going to listen to this, and I almost guarantee your jaw is going to drop. Your jaw is going to drop, and you're going to say to yourself, oh my goodness, now I get it. I thought he was a creep. I thought he was now I know why he acts that way. Oh, that's why she does that stuff. Oh, and your jaw is going to go, okay. And I believe you'll find it very educational, also somewhat entertaining, but very educational. And then you're going to have the great opportunity to actually try to apply it in the real world to your marriage. And it's not going to be so easy, because it's very easy. Isn't it exciting to listen to a shiur like this? Yeah, wow, the elephant and then the runners. Yeah, wow, let's go. And it's very easy to listen to a marriage seminar. Oh, it's so interesting, and it's, wow, very eye-opening. But it's when you have to learn to, excuse my expression, shut your mouth. When you have to learn how to be actually other-centered. When you have to say, it's not about me, but it's about the other person. And when you have to learn how to not just be a robot and go through the motions as we normally do, but to actually begin thinking and acting in a different way, you're going to find it very difficult. And especially if you're married more than 2 weeks, and likely there have been words that are said, there have been feelings that are hurt, there have been things that have been expressed, and it's going to be very difficult to pick up the pieces and begin working on it again. Can I share with you one little fact of life? If you're married, you could listen. If you're not married, don't listen. Okay? Please don't listen if you're not married. The human being who will hurt you more than any other human being on the planet is your spouse. The human being who will get you angrier than any other person in existence is your spouse. And likely, the person that you'll hate more than any other person in the world is your spouse. And that's assuming it's a good marriage. Now, don't listen if you're single, but if you're married, you'll know what I'm talking about. But let me explain to you why this is. You see, marriage is the closest bond imaginable. You are completely vulnerable, completely dependent, and in a successful marriage, you're one unit. And I don't care who you are, invariably you're going to do things to inadvertently, not intentionally, hurt your spouse. You're not going to recognize, you're not going to understand, and you're going to do things that hurt your spouse. But you're so close and you're so vulnerable that it's going to hurt in a very real way. You see, if I have a roommate who I don't like, I separate. I go to a different room. If I have a brother who I can't get along with, whatever, I don't hang out with him much. But when you're married to a person, you're with them 24/7, you're completely open, completely vulnerable. She knows your inner secrets. He knows exactly what makes you tick. And I don't care how sensitive you are, there are going to be things that you do by mistake, by accident, that are going to hurt the other person. And the reason I say that is because if you want to be successfully married, you have to learn that marriage is about learning to be more sensitive, learning to care, learning to forgive, learning to get beyond things, and learning that at a certain point we just leave it and continue and go on. And these things are not so easy. Again, I highly recommend the marriage seminar because it'll give you a very good understanding, especially if you're single. It'll be so entertaining and you'll laugh at all those married people. Oh, I can't believe they made that mistake and that mistake. I'm so smart. I'll never do that dumb thing again. By the way, I have a CD out called the 10 Really Dumb Mistakes that very smart couples make. I love when couples listen to it. When couples listen to it, they take a score check. Some get 2. Oh yeah, we made 2 of those 10 dumb mistakes. Some couples get 4. One couple I know told me they have 10 out of 10. That's pretty impressive. 10 out of 10. But folks, this is not to knock marriage. Marriage is the most beautiful, most harmonious, most gratifying relationship in the world if you know how to work the relationship, if you know what it's about. The reason why so many people have so much trouble in marriage is because they don't understand marriage. They don't understand what change is about. They don't understand what they're doing in a marriage. So they're grating on each other and they're killing each other. Hashem did not design marriages to be miserable. Hashem wants us to be happy, and a proper marriage is the most invigorating, the most supportive, the most beautiful relationship you could ever imagine. But it requires a lot of work. And I think that this Chazal shares with us a very important perspective. Hillel obligates the poor person. Why? Because the poor person's reality was changed. You see, the poor person said for day after day, week after week, I would love to have learned, but I couldn't. Had he taken Hillel as his hero, and had he said the words, Hillel did it, and so too could have I, then the poor man would have succeeded. Hillel obligates the poor man because Hillel shattered the myth. Like that mighty elephant who escaped, he broke through that barrier. He broke the 4-minute mile, and once Hillel did it, now made it possible for everyone else. And that's what the Gemara is sharing with us. And that is a lesson that applies to anything in life. You have to have heroes, you have to have goals, you also have to know that it takes a lot of work. It takes getting knocked down. Muhammad Ali got hit 1 million times to the head. It's the ability to get back into the fight time after time that separates the real champions, and that's a rule for success in life. And I want to close with one last thought. What happens when the elephant discovers that the rope isn't strong enough and the peg isn't deep enough? You'd like to know what happens? It was Hartford, Connecticut, 1944. Barnum and Bailey parked the circus in that town. And in those days, they used to take the circus from town to town, and they would open the tent. This tent was this huge, huge tent. And under it, they would put the 3 rings, and that's where the circus would go. Anyway, they parked the trucks in Hartford, Connecticut, and they set up the tent. And in those days, they used to treat the tent with paraffin. Now, as you know, paraffin is water resistant, but paraffin is also highly flammable. In any case, the show is on, and at some point, no one knows how, but the tent itself caught fire. Flames, smoke, pandemonium, people began running, screaming, yelling. At the end, 121 people died. And when they began cleaning things up, the trainer found the herd of elephants that had been tied up at the time way off on the side of the edge over there. So the trainer brought back the elephants, tied them up to the pegs in the ground, and the elephants escaped. They just broke out. So the trainer tied them again, and again they just walked away. You see, what had happened was, when the fire broke out, the elephants were tied. They weren't ready to perform yet. People were yelling, screaming, smoke, fire. The elephants forgot, and they just escaped. They ran away. And from that moment on, the elephants could not be tied down to the peg in the ground. They found out the secret. The peg is too weak, the rope isn't strong enough, and Barnum and Bailey had to retire that entire herd. They had to bring in a new herd of elephants, because once the elephant learned the trick, it never could be tied again. Folks, would you like to know what is the most powerful, empowering, beautiful feeling in life? It's when you set a goal and you reach 70%, 80% of it, and you feel a sense of empowerment, you feel wind in your sails, and you say to yourself, wait a minute, I set a real goal and I reached it. Maybe I really can be someone. And you start growing, you start accomplishing. Like that mighty elephant, you discover you don't have to be whatever. You don't have to just go through the motions like every other human being in Western civilization. You could challenge yourself, you could demand from yourself, and you could tap into your talents. And when you do that, you live a very different life. You discover the secret that Hashem gave you strength and abilities. You set goals and you reach them. Granted you fall. Granted you're willing to take the punch. You get back in the fight. You get back in time after time. You grow. You live a life of meaning, of purpose, a beautiful life, and you become a great human being. May Hashem grant us the wisdom and ability to put this into practice. Again, I welcome you to go to the shmooze.com or to the Shmooze app. You could download the marriage seminar as well as the rest of the content. We also have CDs here, the 10 really dumb mistakes that very smart couples make. They're available for, what's the word? Free. They're available for free. There's also car magnets, and if you want, you could buy the marriage seminar. Come, all the takers. Okay. Discount. Okay, thank you very much.